Cool. Good afternoon, ladies. So nice to see so many of you here today. I get the privilege of introducing our speaker today, Diane Wilkinson. But before she comes up, let me just tell you a little bit of a background about her. So Diane spent a few years overseas in London and South Korea before she came back to Joburg. And when she came back here, she completed her discipleship training school through YWAM, that's Youth with Mission. And it was during this time that God really spoke to her strongly about the issue of human trafficking in South Africa. And although she had her own plans of wanting to go back to Asia, God had his own plans for her. And that's when she joined Justice Act. So at that time, they're an anti-human trafficking organization, and she did that through YWAM. And then after that, she joined NFN. So that's National Freedom Network that you see the logo up there. And so she was their Gauteng representative during 2011 when she joined them, and that's when they formally launched this National Freedom Network. You might wonder, what is the National Freedom Network? So they're an anti-human trafficking organization that sort of facilitates communication amongst many of the anti-human trafficking organizations throughout the country. So I think there was a lot of organizations doing some great things, but no real facilitation or communication between them. So that's what National Freedom Network aims to do. So this is her 6th year doing counter-human trafficking work, and she is the National Network Coordinator for the NFN. So, and she's also a member of the Gauteng Anti-Trafficking in Persons Task Team. So Di, why don't you come up and join me? So I think we can... So I think we can all agree that we're in good hands today, and we're going to hear a lot about this and some really interesting facts. And I just really pray that, we'll be able to learn how we can equip ourselves to know more about it and to be encouraged to know that the Lord is really working in this area. So just before I hand over to her, let's just say another word of prayer. Cool. Lord, I know this is a hard topic to swallow, and we just thank you for all of those that have joined us together today to come and learn more and see what can be done to make a difference. And I just thank you for Diane, her willingness to come and share with us. And we just praise you for how prevalent your name is across the circles of anti-human trafficking. And we know that without you, we cannot fight this, and we can't win without you, Lord. And we just pray that you'd soften our hearts to hear, and that we would be encouraged to know that this is not a lost cause, Lord, that there's so much that can be done. And I pray that you'd allow your Holy Spirit to speak through Di, and that your name would be glorified through everything we do today. And I just pray that at the end of today, we'd be on fire for you and for your cause, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Great, thank you. I feel like a bit of a rock star with this thing on. All right, welcome everybody. It's so lovely to see a room full of ladies who just want to know more about this cause of anti-human trafficking. And I'm going to start off, the theme for today is what is our worth? And so I just want to quickly read to you 2 scriptures. The first one is from Luke 12:6 and 7. And it's in the wider context of Jesus talking to his disciples and telling them not to worry. Sorry, no, I'm talking rubbish. He's talking about the fear of God. And he says, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins, and not one of them is forgotten before God? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore. You are of more value than many sparrows." All right. And then the other one, 12 verse 24, that's in the context of do not worry. But he says, "Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which have neither storehouse nor barn, and God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds?" All right. And then the last scripture, John 3:16, I think we all know, followed by 17, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved." And for me, there is nothing that shows greater value or greater worth that the God who created the universe sent his son to die for me and for you. That just shows what our value and our worth is in God's eyes. All right, and I just want you to keep this in mind throughout the whole talk. It is quite a heavy topic. It's quite a hard talk, but just keep that in the back of your mind. And perhaps even harder is going to be to keep it in your mind that he's not just talking about the victims. God is talking about everybody. Jesus came to save everybody. So we're also including the perpetrators and the traffickers in that. Just keep that in mind, okay? All right, so we're going to jump right in then. What is human trafficking? Just quickly by show of hands, how many of you have heard of human trafficking before? Most of you. So we don't really need this talk today, right? Okay. Very simply put, it's modern-day slavery. So it's the buying and selling of people with the intent to exploit them, usually for financial gain. So the exploitation of that person is for some kind of monetary reward. I'm just going to put my stopwatch on to keep track of time, okay? But it's also known as trafficking in persons or tip. So if I say tip, human trafficking, trafficking in persons, it's all the same thing, okay? However, people are not fresh meat at a price, okay? That is not something that we agree with. It is not something we want to see happening in our city, in our province, in our country. Worldwide, human trafficking is the second largest organized crime. All right, it's superseded only by drugs trafficking, closely followed by arms dealing. However, it is also cited as the fastest growing form of organized crime. So common sense then tells us if it's the fastest growing form of organized crime and it's currently sitting at second, at some point, if it carries on the way it is, it's going to jump up into first place. All right, they also say that around 1.2 million children are trafficked every year, and that half of that number are from our continent, ladies, from Africa. And it's a crime that generates roughly $150 billion a year. I didn't even bother trying to figure that out in rands. That's a lot of money. So it's big business. All right, just to make a note, so there's a lot of other crimes that are linked to human trafficking. It's very closely linked in many cases to smuggling. But just note that smuggling is a different crime. It's something separate from human trafficking. But immigration offenses, things like fraud documents, forgery of documents, there's racketeering, using businesses as a front for what is going on, which we'll chat about just now. Things like sexual assault, sexual abuse, murder, down to all that kind of stuff. So it's a crime that's very much, it doesn't happen in isolation. It's very linked to a lot of other crimes that we already know about. In addition, it is also very much linked in a lot of cases with the organized crime syndicates who are trafficking in other things, who are doing the drugs and the smuggling of the rhino horns and smuggling of gold and all that other stuff. They often use the same routes. Just in this case, the commodity is not gold or ivory or rhino horns, it's people. All right. At the end of the day, this is something that breaks God's heart. This is not his design for humanity. It's not what we were intended to do. We were not made to sell each other and exploit each other, and it really, really breaks God's heart. There's a verse in Amos 2, verse 6. Sorry, even with my glasses, I struggle to read the back there. But this is really God speaking through one of the prophets saying, I'm not going to withhold punishment from Israel because she's been doing some things I'm not too pleased about. And the very first thing he mentions, he said, because they sell the righteous for silver and the poor for a pair of sandals. All right? So clearly, God says it there, I'm not okay with this. This is not what I had in mind for you. All right, I think this is the video here. Just going to show you a quick little video.
I'm telling you, it is amazing. South Africa, you have to come with me.
But how would I even get there?
Don't worry, I've got connections. They're gonna love you. With that body, you could definitely be a model.
really think so?
Oh, absolutely. Girl, think about the cash you're gonna make. You are gonna make so much money. Think about your family. You can send money home. They're gonna be so proud of you.
Okay, quite chilling, isn't it? See how quickly and how easily it can happen. All right, just to look through the official South African definition of human trafficking, and the reason I want to go through this quite in depth is because a lot of people tend to have a very stereotypical idea of what human trafficking is, and there are three very clear elements that need to be present for a case to be considered human trafficking, and those are your mobilization, which means some kind of action needs to happen to the victim, your means, this is your method, and then your actual exploitation, so the different kinds of trafficking. All right, and we're going to look just very quickly at two of the mobilization elements. Only one is needed for it to be a case of trafficking. You need one mobilization element, one means, and one form of exploitation, and you've got your case of trafficking. But recruitment and transportation are two of the mobilization sort of sub-elements that are very often present in cases here in South Africa, and so we're going to look at them very quickly. Recruitment, basically your victim needs to be recruited in some way. You know, how do they get into the situation? We have had cases where it has happened by force, that, you know, the person's kidnapped or abducted. That does happen. And I think as more and more awareness of the issue starts to get out, we'll see this kind of recruitment happening more and more, unfortunately. But very often, more often than not, recruitment in a trafficking situation involves some kind of false promises or some kind of deception. All right, so very often the person doesn't really know what's going to be happening to them on the other side. And just to highlight the deceit there, Proverbs 12:20, the first part, it says, "Deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil." So this thing that starts off with deception, you know it's just going to go down one evil path. All right, recruitment happens in a lot of ways, all around the world. It varies from country to country and from group to group, area to area. But what we see a lot of in South Africa is the false job offers. Like you just saw in the video, that was sort of more the modeling, but come to South Africa, you'll really make it big there. And that is a dream that is sold to a lot of people, because South Africa is the economic hub of sub-Saharan Africa. You know, they have this idea that Joburg is the city of gold, that we've got tons of jobs and lots of money here. That is what the rest of Africa thinks. And so false job opportunities is a very big recruitment tool. Usually the jobs are to work in a hotel, to work in a restaurant, or a call center. Those three seem to be very common. And then again, with the girls offering modeling contracts, with the guys, soccer contracts. And I'm not just talking boys. We all know most little boys love soccer. I'm talking men from West Africa who get sold the dream of coming to play for a South African soccer club. They go as far as selling their land, their family land, or their businesses to raise the money to come to South Africa. And then they end up being exploited this side. Social media is a big tool, and this is really, ladies, if you have daughters. I'm not saying ban them from Facebook, because you'll probably kill their social life, but make sure your children understand that what they put out there on the internet is public, always. All right, make sure they understand that. Mix it. I don't have it, I'm a bit old for it, but it's one of these things that are available on the cell phones. We've had cases where victims have been recruited via Mixit, via Facebook, online dating websites. All right, just keep that in mind and make sure your children are aware of what they're posting up there. The situation of the lover boys, that's what the picture refers to with the seemingly happy couple. Basically, these guys are agents. And this is their job. It's their job to go out and make young girls fall in love with them and kind of reel them in that way. So usually an older guy who comes along, and they're very good at spotting the right kind of girl. It's usually someone who doesn't have a very strong support structure, or she can be easily taken away from that support structure. very low self-esteem, low self-worth, and usually someone who doesn't have a strong male role figure in her life. So she's looking for that attention. And he comes along and sweeps her off her feet, absolutely romances her, spoils her, tells her how much he loves her. She's never had these things before, so she falls for it hook, line, and sinker. Usually, drugs introduced at some point reels her away from any support structure again that might be in place, and then turns around at some points and says, "You're not going to pay me back for everything that I've given you." And the way that you're going to do that is by selling yourself. All right, so it happens like this. We've had cases of families actually selling or giving away their own children. Sometimes they know what's going to happen, but a lot of times they don't. They're living in rural areas. You have someone who's well-known and well-respected in the community who comes along. He's driving a flashy car, or she, dressed nicely, and they come along and they say, I see you're struggling. You've got your 5 kids. Husband's probably nowhere around. Let me take your oldest daughter. I know it's a hard decision for you, but I can make sure she gets into school in the big city. She can work for a family in the afternoons and earn a bit of money that she can send home for you. And as difficult as that decision is for that mom, she thinks, wow, my daughter's never going to have another opportunity like this again. The family's not going to have another opportunity like this again. So off she goes. Do you think that family ever hears from her again? Refugees often promise safe passage, so again, that link with smuggling. And then travel agents. This is quite a new one that I heard of the other day. But we have our young people who, they often want to take a gap year and go overseas. And I encourage that. That's a good thing. But sometimes there are agents who work within the travel agencies who say, when you get to the other side, just look up my friend. He'll help you out with a job. Young people, they're enthusiastic, they're excited, and they'll take any contact that you can give them. So we just got to be very careful and very aware. Then the other element, the transportation side, this doesn't always have to happen in a trafficking case, but it, again, is a very common scenario, and it can be legal or illegal transportation. Victims are often accompanied, so they're often watched 24/7. But the thing with the transportation, or the thing to remember, is that the victims will always go to where there is a demand for their services. So for example, if I run a brothel and my clientele like little girls, what am I going to go and recruit? It's not going to be women, it's going to be little girls. On the other hand, if I run a farm and I want cheap labor or free labor, I'm going to go looking to recruit men who can do that labor, not little girls. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, let's look at South Africa. So we are what is known as a source country, a destination country, and a transit country. So we're a source country in that our South African people are trafficked abroad. So they are usually trafficked into the sex industry or for forced labor. And then they're also trafficked within our own borders. So, for example, from Durban to Cape Town, or from Joburg to Bloem, from one province to another, one city to another. It can even happen within one community, from one street to another street. You don't have to travel thousands of kilometers to be trafficked. We're a destination country then, in that we also receive trafficking victims in from other countries. And you can see some of them listed from recent years. We've had victims from some of these places. And I can tell you that last year, from January to May, in our province alone, we had 35 adult victims of trafficking. So that excludes children, and it excludes anyone who was not helped within the social development system. So I really think that is just a scratch on the surface in terms of figures and numbers. But that's roughly 6 or 7 people a month, if you average it out. And that's only in our province alone. All right, and then we're also a transit country, so victims will come into South Africa from another country. They'll stop over here. We're sort of a stopover point, and then usually from Joburg, they're then dispersed on either up into Africa, down into Lesotho, on to Europe, etc. All right, looking at the means then. So your means is basically your method. So why is it that this person is staying in this situation? When I first learned about human trafficking, my initial reaction was, but why don't they just try to run away? I was very naive. All All right, so victims can be physically trapped. That does happen. We have had cases, in Joburg, where girls have literally been found chained to the bed. That does happen. But a lot of the times, or most often with human trafficking, it is psychological and emotional entrapment that happens. So in these pictures, you can see, again, physically trapped. The picture to your left is in Southeast Asia. The girls are behind lock and key. Even if they wanted to get away, they can't. The other picture is an establishment here in South Africa where they had young underage girls, and whenever they got tip-offs of a police raid, they would put the girls into the cupboard. There was a trapdoor in the cupboard. So they'd go down there, they'd push some furniture over, and they were, again, just physically trapped. But again, more often than not, it's psychological and it's emotional. And this is why you can have a girl standing on a street corner, dressed like a prostitute, clearly soliciting, probably even has a cell phone in her hand. There's not a pimp in sight. That doesn't mean she's not trafficked. So a lot of blackmail, very often against family. The guys will go as far as taking recent photographs of family and showing it to their victims and saying, if you don't do this, we will harm your family. Your sister's next. We'll kill your mom. All right? That's a big motivator to stay and do what they want you to do. Usually a lot of violence involved, starvation. They'll usually lock their victims up, starve them, rape them, beat them, until they basically try to break down your spirit and your will. They try to break you down as a person until you're just so broken that you'll just do whatever they want you to do, without resistance, without fighting. Often shame is used. So they'll say, oh, well, you can go. Go back to your community. Go back to your family. We'll tell them that you were a prostitute. All right? In South Africa, prostitution has a very big stigma around it, in that when it comes out that this person was in the sex trade, even if it was against their will, the community shuns them. In some cases, the family even shuns them. And that is why reintegration of trafficking victims is so difficult. Even if it was against their will, they still get shunned. Witchcraft is something that is used a lot. We live in Africa. It's a big part of culture, all right? And us from the spiritual side, we know that this thing is not just flesh and blood. There's a lot more at work here. But basically, they perform what they call juju rituals with a lot of the victims, and place a curse on them. And they say, if you try to run away, again, your family will die, or you will die, or something really bad will happen. And we've had cases where girls literally will not leave. The guys are there ready to take them out of the situation. They will not leave because they say, he's got some of my hair, or he's got my ID book, or he's got my clothes, or some of my blood. They're terrified. It's a very real mechanism that keeps them in the situation. Debt bondage is also a very big one. Very often what happens in some of the different kinds of trafficking is that the victim will be told, you now owe me back. You owe me for the airfare and the visa and the passport I arranged for you, or for the taxi fare, or for the bus fare, however you got there. You owe me for the clothes I'm going to give you, the food I'm going to give you. You owe me for, whatever it is. And this debt is hugely inflated and is very unrealistic. But the victim often feels, I have to pay this back before I can leave. And we had a case, it was quite a few years ago, when trafficking wasn't, it was still a very, the fight against trafficking was still very new in South Africa. But there were some ladies from Thailand who actually managed to escape from their trafficker. And they made it as far as the airport. This guy picked up the phone, phoned the airport, and said, you can't let those girls leave, they owe me money. That was it. They were handed straight back to their trafficker. All right? Stockholm Syndrome, do you know what that is? All right. It's basically an unhealthy bond between the perpetrator and the victim, where the victim often feels some kind of emotional attachment or emotional bond to the perpetrator. All right? It's a big psychological thing. I won't go into detail, but basically to say that a lot of times victims don't want to testify against their traffickers, either because they think they're in love with them, or there's this bond that just prevents them from doing so. Forced addiction to drugs is also a big one. There was a case a few years ago of 3 girls who got trafficked from Joburg to Durban, and they were forcibly addicted to drugs. They were forcibly given the drugs, and as their bodies started craving, the guys said, well, you can have more drugs, but first you go out and you work. That's how you get your drugs. And that's how they were forced into it, pulled into it. The traffickers will often take away documentation. So they'll often take away your ID or your passport. They will take away your identity because they now own you. And then also isolation. So they will keep you socially isolated, but also linguistically. So for example, if I get trafficked to England, I speak English, so it's going to be quite easy for me to ask for help if I get that opportunity. Whereas if I get trafficked, for example, to rural Mozambique, I don't speak the local dialects or Portuguese. It's going to be so much more difficult for me to ask for help from anybody. All right. The last element then, the exploitation. So this is your different kinds of trafficking. What is it that actually happens to people who have been trafficked? The IOM, International Organization for Migration, they're the ones who made the little video clip that we saw. But they say that traffickers use the victims for, at the end of the day, money. It's all about money, what I can get from you. And in a few cases as well, free service or labor. But the majority of cases, it's to make a lot of money. But human trafficking is something that really takes place. It's quite an underground crime. It's not something that you're always just going to pick up or notice right away, unless you're looking for it. And very often it'll take place behind some kind of legitimate business. Right, the sexual side of it is, I think, the one that most of us know about, the sex trafficking. It gets the most attention. I think the media love to go on about this one because it's, I don't want to say it's the most glamorous, but you know what I mean when we're talking about media. But anything basically that is forced, all right? So prostitution is not human trafficking. Forced prostitution is. There's a difference, okay? But anything forced within the sexual industry, sex industry, will be considered trafficking. So it could be working the streets, working in the brothels, massage parlors. We had a case, actually not too far from here, in a very nice suburb called Fairlands. Is there anyone from Fairlands yet today? Too shy to put up your hands now. Okay. Basically, it was a couple. So she was from Thailand, and he's South African. They're married. And she would go over to Thailand and recruit Thai ladies. And basically say to them, come over and work in the massage parlor. And they'd get here and very quickly discover that it wasn't just massages that they were going to be doing. The massage parlor was really just a front for a brothel. So they did the massage, but they had to also sexually service a lot of their clients. These girls had to work 7 days a week. They were fed and watered when and as their traffickers deemed necessary. They slept on the floor of the massage parlor of where they worked. And they had a debt bond of 35,000 Rand each. So these ladies were told, you cannot leave until you've paid us back 35,000 Rand each. Now, just to put it into perspective, out of all the money that they made, the traffickers took everything, and they got 100 Rand a month each. And with that, they had to survive, and they had to pay off this 35,000 Rand debt. You can do the maths. It's never going to happen. Okay. All right, gentlemen's clubs, I'm not saying that all of them are involved, but there definitely are some in South Africa that are. Right, but not everybody gets trafficked into the sex industry. There's a whole range of other forms of trafficking as well. And as South Africa, I think this is something that we really need to start creating awareness around, that it's not just sex trafficking. In fact, in terms of forced labor, they reckon globally that in terms of sheer numbers, more people are trafficked into the forced labor situation than into the sex industry. So these are kind of what they call the 3D jobs, your difficult, dirty, and dangerous jobs. Jobs that you're not ordinarily going to find somebody, to easily and readily come and work for you to do this kind of stuff. Some of the examples, the deep sea fishing. We've had cases in South Africa, foreign-owned vessels, but fishing off of our shores, with Cambodians and Indonesians aboard. And the one guy, when he eventually got onto South African soil, he said, this is the first time I've been on land in 5 years. I haven't been paid in 5 years. This ship got abandoned in the end by the guys who owned it. And he said, I haven't been paid for those 5 years that I've been out at sea. The mining industry, also quite rife, agricultural industry, construction, Perhaps some of you have heard, I think it's Qatar that is up for the next one of the World Cups or the Olympics or one of those big sporting things. They have been given a really hard time because they use a lot of slave labor in the Middle East when it comes to construction. Child labor, then, anything that is bad for a child's normal healthy development, that is going to negatively impact them, and they're not getting the childhood that they really deserve. Are you ready for these industry examples? Because I was shocked when I found some of these out. The makeup industry, ladies. In your eyeshadow and some of the blusher, there's, sparkly. That sparkly stuff is called mica. And about 60% of the world's mica is mined in India, who are well known for using child labor in mining. I was horrified. I've gone through all my makeup and thrown out all the mica products. The clothing industry, not just the fact of why is this piece of clothing so cheap, who made it, but down to the raw materials. Uzbekistan is a country that is well known for using forced labor. The government goes as far as pulling doctors out of hospitals to go and harvest cotton during harvest time so that they meet their quotas. I met one of our international network partners. They work in Bulgaria just the other day, and she was telling me she met a little child from Uzbekistan, and the tips of his fingers have fallen off because all he did day in and day out was pick cotton. All right, it's that hectic. So where's the raw materials of what we're buying? Where are they sourced? But then also, who made it? How was it made? Why is this product so cheap and that one's a bit more expensive? Carpet and textile industry. A colleague of mine from Homeland Security said he went up to Egypt and they had big sweatshops where you've just got row after row after row after row of kids sitting down cross-legged. Their hands are tiny, so they can do those beautiful patterns in these carpets that adults can't necessarily do. Not getting fed properly, no exercise, no sunshine, no vitamin D, and as a result, from sitting all day cross-legged, they're now getting deformities in their legs. All right, that's not the life for a child. Cocoa and chocolate industry, also about 75% of the world's cocoa is farmed in the Ivory Coast. Chocolate, ladies, I love chocolate. I was devastated. The good news is, in South Africa, the Cadbury's plain milk slab is fair trade. You'll see when you look at it, on the little right-hand side at the bottom of the slab, you'll see the fair trade symbol. It's the only one that I know of in South Africa. If you can stick to non-flavored chocolates, I challenge you to do that. Especially coming up to Easter. I've got this fabulous little thing from Stop the Traffic UK on my Facebook, and it's an Easter egg, and it says, children love Easter eggs, except those who are forced to make them. I thought that was quite good. The entertainment industry, so in some places, children are trafficked into, for example, circuses, and then taught how to do all the acrobatics. They're not paid for what they do. They're treated really badly. And then also camel jockeying, mainly in the Middle East, where these children are kidnapped and put onto these camels for racing, for the entertainment and pleasure of these people. And it's a fact that the louder a child cries and performs, the faster that camel runs. And you can imagine, a little child bouncing around on this camel. I don't think many of them stay on. It's just so dangerous. And then obviously the war situation with child soldiers, so up in places like Uganda and the DRC. Domestic servitude is also a really big one that we see in South Africa. So basically a house slave. All right, I'm not talking about your normal domestic help that comes in and you pay her fair wages. I'm talking about someone who works 12 to 16 hours a day, doesn't get paid for it. There's often other forms of abuse that come with that. She has no freedom to come and go as she pleases. She's not allowed to communicate with anyone outside the house. This happens in South Africa. All right, private homes, hospitality industry, restaurants, au pair industry. Organ and body part trafficking, also another big one here. And this happens sort of on two legs. You've got the black market with the muti, where they use body parts and organs for the traditional muti rituals. But then also within the medical field itself, we actually have a huge international case that's been investigated, and South Africa is one of the countries implicated. A hospital down in Durban. You have very rich people who are very desperate for a kidney, say for example. I'll give you that money, you just find me that kidney. I don't care where it comes from, you don't need to tell me, you just get that kidney. Forced marriage, also big here. In South Africa, it's being done under the guise of cultural tradition, so not business, but cultural tradition, called ukutwala, which traditionally, as a cultural practice, there's nothing wrong with it. It's between two consenting adults to kind of get the ball rolling on lobola negotiations and marriage. But what is happening now is you have very old men, okay, I shouldn't say very, you have much older men, sort of 40s, 50s, 60s, who are abducting girls who are 12, 13, 14, abducting them out of school, forcing them into these traditional marriages, and then basically raping and abusing them every day. And then forced criminal activities. How many of you heard of Nolu? She's the South African lady who got caught in Thailand with the cocaine in her dreadlocks. I see a lot of people shaking, nodding your heads. I've read her sworn testament, which clearly indicates human trafficking. So she didn't come from a very poor family. In fact, she had her own business. I think it was a catering company. And a friend of hers approached her and said, I've got some business opportunity, hair products in Brazil. And she thought, great, it's my friend, let me go along. She got there, realized that her friend had known all along what was actually happening. And when she arrived, she found out that actually the job you're going to be doing is drug trafficking. And she got so distraught and so upset, and she refused. And they said, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you. Nobody will ever find your body. Nobody will ever know what happened to you. And she got so upset that in the end they said to her, just go and do this one run, and then we'll let you go. Do you think they really meant to let her go? She said when she walked into that airport in Thailand, they were waiting for her. The officials knew that she was coming. So she was sent in as the decoy on purpose. They knew she would get caught. They knew she would probably spend the rest of her life in Thai prison while the bigger cache of drugs went through. And this is happening to a lot of South African ladies. All right, there's also forced begging. I'm not saying everybody who begs on the street corners is there by force, but some of them are. Some of them are being controlled by other people, are collecting for other people, especially the children. Adoptions, illegal adoptions, adoptions with the intent to exploit the child. And then we've had cases of forced impregnations, so where the girls are forcibly impregnated with the intention to exploit or to sell that child. All right, who is involved in this crime of human trafficking? You can see it's a whole big web of people. It's not just one or two people. There's a whole web of them. And I showed this slide to a community group around the time of the World Cup, and I had a social worker sitting there, and she kind of shot up in her chair when she saw the slide, and she said, hang on a sec, that last brick there of the clientele, who is that? Who is that? She said, who are the guys that are going to use the girls? It's the guys in our community. It's our fathers, our brothers, our uncles, our colleagues. But not only that, who are the people buying the makeup with the mica slave labor behind it? Buying the electronic goods that have parts that are made by slave labor. There's a demand. Trafficking is a business, and there's supply and there's demand. Profile of a trafficker. So the bad guys. Who do you think the traffickers are? Drug dealers. I think very often it's linked. Respected men in the community, absolutely. Churchgoers. There are cases in Africa predominantly where pastors are involved. But the truth is, it can be anyone. It can be anyone. And very often the recruiters are women. We're having more and more cases coming up where it's women recruiting other women and children. Why? Women are not seen in quite the same predatory stereotype that men are, and it's easier to trust another woman, if you think about it. On the same token, before I get to this one, it's just a lot easier to traffic someone that you already know, someone who already trusts you. And so they reckon in almost half of cases, the victim is introduced to the trafficker by someone they already know and trust. Right, Proverbs 21:6, it says, "Getting treasures by a lying tongue is the fleeting fantasy of those who seek death." And again, just that lying tongue, that deceit is what lures victims in with trafficking. And the victims, who are the victims? I heard it, well done. It can happen to anyone. You know, we have this stereotype that it's only women and children. That's not true. It's also men, it's also boys. It really depends on what the traffickers want you for. It depends on what they're looking for and what they need. All right, I am very quickly going to go through some red flags. This is just for you as a community to be aware of, okay? Possible signs of trafficking. So we've got general ones and we've got health ones. And it's not just one or two of these, okay? Very often, it's going to be a combination of these. So the first one, for example, the person doesn't speak English or any of the local dialects, all right? They might just be a tourist, and it's their first time in the country. They might just be a tourist coming to visit South Africa, all right? It doesn't mean they're automatically a trafficking victim. But if they have a lack of documentation or there's somebody else controlling their documents, if there's somebody else who's speaking for them, you ask that person a question and this person answers. Why? Why is that person not engaging with me directly? Or if their answers appear very scripted, very rehearsed, like someone has told them what to say. There was a huge case in England that was cracked open because all of the victims that they rescued had the exact same story. And it turned out that what happened was when they got trafficked, they got sat down with a book that told the story, and they got told, you will learn the story, and if you ever get caught, or if the police talk to you, this is what you tell them. And that's how they actually got caught out in the end. If the person has a lack of freedom to move around, there's someone with them all the time. I had the community in Yeovil telling me about one of the particularly notorious clubs in that area, and they said there's a lot of foreign girls there, and they're never by themselves. There's always a big guy who's with them whenever they go out, to the shops or whenever they're out and about. There's always someone with them watching them. Those are red flags. If they're unpaid or paid very little, it could indicate the labor side of things. And then if someone is under 18 and they're in prostitution and it's commercial sex, so somebody else is making money off of that person, automatic human trafficking. Just good to remember. Then the health flags, really good if any of you work in the medical field, because they reckon that about 1/3 of victims go through the medical care system at some point while they're still in captivity. So the medical field has a huge role to play. But yeah, as you can see, a lot of non-specific symptoms. So again, a lot of these in combination with some of the general red flags could really indicate a case of human trafficking. All right, I want to end off this first session, and we're going to have time for questions right at the end, okay? So if you've got questions already, just hang on to them. But I'm going to end off with some quotes from survivors of human trafficking. And the first one is a Bulgarian lady who was trafficked to Germany. And she says, maybe some people could call me dirty whore, but for others, I might be a girl who can give them really good advice. And that for me, often we find in South Africa, victims don't want to talk. They don't really want to share what they went through. And the main reason is because their traffickers are still operating. There has been no justice. And so they just want to get on with their lives. They don't want to cause trouble. They just want to move on. But if a trafficking victim is willing to share their story, we would do good to listen to them, especially as a community, and especially if they're from our community. How were you trafficked? What happened? How were you recruited? Who were these people? And as a community, let's stand up and say no. Another lady says, you always remember what has happened to you. You're not clean anymore like you were before. They told me that they would cut me into pieces and send me back like that. So again, that fear, that means that control of intimidation. And then the last survivor says, I wish to forget, but this is impossible. This experience will remain an eternal burden. And my hope, my dream, my desire for South Africa is not that we're a country that is having to rehabilitate trafficking victims. Because let me tell you, it's not a quick fix. It's not something that happens in a year or 2 or 3 or 10. It's a lifetime of rehabilitation for them. My dream for our country is that we get to a point where we are preventing it from happening in the first place. And we have a long way to go. That is a huge, huge challenge. There are a lot of underlying issues that need to be dealt with from both government and from civil society, but I don't think that it's impossible. All right, we are going to break for tea. I hope I haven't overloaded you too much. And as I say, when we come back, we're going to do some application points. So just go through how is it that you guys can maybe get involved in this fight, and then we'll end off with a time of questions and answers. Okay.
Who made those chocolate brownies? They were amazing, I just have to say. Alright. My spacing's got a bit wonky there, but I just quickly want to share with you some measures that are in place in South Africa. So I've shared with you all the bad news in the first session. Hopefully this is going to be a bit better. So just to let you know that we do have some legislation in South Africa against human trafficking. It's called the Prevention and Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act. However, it's not yet in operation. So we have this lovely piece of legislation, and it's good legislation. It has some of the harshest penalties in the world against human trafficking. So when it gets implemented and we start convicting these guys, which is going to happen, the maximum penalties are life imprisonment and or 100 million rand fine. You heard though what the the income generation for trafficking is, like 150 billion US a year. So the reasoning behind that is if you just give someone a fine of 100,000 rand, he'll whip it out of his back pocket and hand it to you with a smile. So they said let's try and make this as hard as we can for these guys. So that's why we've got such harsh penalties. And then the reason for it not yet being in operation is basically because there's 5 government departments who are the main government role players when working against trafficking and who are going to be the most affected by this legislation. And so they've got to get each of their departments kind of ready for this law before it can come into effect. So that's what's happening. There's a lot of behind the scenes work going on. And we're hoping that the legislation is going to be passed this year. So please, if you want to pray about that, that's a good thing to pray for. It's going to make our work and our lives a lot easier. Then we do also have a Gauteng Anti-Trafficking in Persons Task Team. So this is led by the government, but it involves government and civil society role players who regularly meet together and go through cases and discuss measures in place and various awareness initiatives and all of that kind of stuff. And then
we've also got a Johannesburg counter-trafficking coalition. So that is then just the civil society organizations who meet together regularly and touch base with the work that we're doing around Joburg. Within the police, there is a unit that deals specifically with these crimes, with these cases. They deal with human trafficking and with smuggling cases. And that's a small unit within the organised crime unit, or the Hawks, or DPCI, as they're also known. And then we also have a national helpline number. We actually have 2 for human trafficking, but I'm just going to share one with you. So I've shared the easier one to remember, 0800 555 999. You can pop that into your cell phone if you want, just to have it on hand, but it's quite an easy one to remember. All right, but what can I do in my personal capacity? I'm just one person, right? What can I do against this global crime? If this is something, if today's talk has really stirred up something in your heart, the first thing I would really like to recommend to you is that you go and educate yourself a little bit more. What I've shared with you today is really just the basics, all right? There's so much more. And when I first got involved in this, I literally took 3 months just to educate myself. I read everything, watched everything, spoke to people. I really did my homework, and I took a good 3 months to do that. So really go and educate yourself. You're welcome to sign up for what we call a network news. This gets sent out on a fortnightly basis, so once every 2 weeks. And it's basically just a collection of human trafficking, updates on cases, updates on the legislation, events and awareness campaigns that are taking place, or feedback on those that have happened. Just trying to keep people up to date, basically, in the network with what's going on in the wider counter-trafficking community. So there'll be a sign-up sheet at our table after this, if you want to sign up for that. And then we've also got an NFN Resources website. So if you go to our NFN website and then to the Resources tab, at the bottom of that Resources page, there's another link to a separate website, the NFN Resources website. And there is loads on there if you want to learn more. There's video clips similar to the one that I showed you. There are press releases, so cases that have come to light and the media have reported on. There's academic research for those of you who really love to read. And there's recommended books and recommended movies as well, and a few learning links to sort of online courses that you can do just to educate yourself a little bit more. But I think that's a good starting place. Then the second thing is to understand that there is a big picture to this work, all right? A lot of people get very emotional at these kind of talks, and they just want to go out and rescue victims. The bad news is that's the police's job, not ours, all right? But prayer never hurts. But just to understand that there is this process and to understand where it is you fit in or where it is you maybe want to fit into this process. So we follow what we call the 4 international Ps of counter-trafficking work. So you'll see right at the top, we've got our trafficking elements, the mobilization and the means and the exploitation. And then just under that, the counter-trafficking elements, which is prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. All right, one of the easiest ways to get involved is creating awareness. The average South African doesn't know that human trafficking is a problem in our country. In addition, those that have heard about trafficking think that human trafficking equals sex trafficking. And as you all know now, after this morning, the first session, it's a lot wider than that. And so it's just getting the conversations going. You know, you don't necessarily have to stand up and do an entire presentation like I did to create awareness. There's so many different things that you can do to get involved in this area. And you can go as small or as big as you want. You can get as creative as you want. There's really been some fun stuff that has happened over the years. But my recommendation is think about you. What are your talents? What are your skills? What is it that you're good at? What is your area of expertise? And how can you maybe use that to create some awareness? My favorite example is a lady by the name of Chantal. She's based in Boksburg, and she works at a bank. That's her day job. But she loves functions and event planning. And so once a year, she holds a really big event that is usually kind of a themed tea party. But she starts planning in January, and the event is in October. So she puts a lot of effort into it. And the first one was a Mad Hatter's tea party, so the sort of Alice in Wonderland theme. Then she had Pretty in Pink, where even the guys came dressed up in pink. It was great. And then last year she did a breakfast at Tiffany's, so your more sort of vintage theme. And it's really such good fun. We have a little awareness talk, but she's got raffles, she's got videos, and it's just a really lovely, lovely morning where it's an awareness day and a fundraiser. And that's just one person. I think her event last year, we had almost 300 people there. So that just goes to show what one person can do. Write about it. If you enjoy writing, a lot of us are on Facebook, on Twitter. If you have a personal blog site, write something up about what you learned today and share it with your followers and your friends and your readers. Even if you maybe want to write for your local newspaper, just a short article for your local newspaper or your local magazine. That's another way to create awareness. And then the last example I want to give you is 3 ladies who are also based in Joburg. A couple of years ago, they went and found a coffee shop that served fair trade coffee. And they said to them, look, we just want to use your venue. We'll bring the people in. So it's a win-win. We've got the venue and the people in one space, and they can listen to us, and you get to sell your coffee and your cakes. And they said, great. And they did that. They had a little evening where they then focused their talk on trafficking within the coffee and the cocoa industries and got to spread some awareness that way. So you can really just have such fun with it if you really wanted to. The other thing I want to say, though, in lines with awareness, it sounds very like awareness, but awareness is the first step of the snowball effect. So if one person is aware, they can go back and spread awareness within an entire community. Once their community knows what to start looking out for, they can start reporting, which means cases will be opened, investigations will start, victims will be rescued, and so it goes on and on. But it all starts with awareness. So please don't underestimate awareness. It is such an important and vital part of this work. Collection drives. This is a very easy way to get involved as well. We have an organization down in Cape Town. They are one of our network partners. They're called Free the Girls. And they work with survivors of sex trafficking specifically, doing kind of a business model with them where they sell bras. So they're always looking for donations of new or gently used bras. Come on, ladies, we all have them. So, that's an easy way to get involved. Collect bras and send it down to them, and then that's what they use with their ladies. And the great thing is that these ladies who have been so abused by men, their clientele are women. So they're not having to deal with men in what they're doing, and it's economic empowerment as well as skills, the business side. Then also the toiletry collections or collections in general for the safe houses. The situation in South Africa, we do have safe houses, but they are traditionally safe houses for victims of abuse that are now also taking in trafficking victims. Not ideal, unfortunately, but that's what we have at the moment. And because, I think, again, mainly because the legislation isn't yet in operation, they don't get a lot to support these victims. I stand to be corrected, but at my last chat with one of the safe houses, they said we get 40 Rand per person per day. They have to clothe these people. I mean, they often come in with what they're wearing. That's it. They have to give them toiletries. They have to feed them. It's just 40 Rand a person a day. So if we can help them out with things like toiletries for men and women, because we've also got a men's shelter up here in Gauteng, clothing. But the thing is, it's easy to go through your cupboard and kind of get all your old clothes and stuff that you don't really wear anymore. But we forget about the things like underwear. All right, please don't donate used underwear. You can go and buy some new ones. But also shoes and socks. I mean, winter's coming up, ladies. Shoes and socks, let's not forget about that. And then cleaning supplies, things like cleaning supplies and non-perishable foods, they also appreciate a lot. And what we've decided in Gauteng is that we're going to be working through the EPIC Foundation. This lady actually makes up comfort packs for survivors of abuse. And instead of now having 500 people around the province having to run to the safe houses and knowing where the safe houses are, so it's really, we've put this in place as a safety mechanism, but we're going to work through her with all of the toiletry and clothing donations, just to try and keep that security in place. Right, you can start or join an A team. How many of you have heard of the A21 campaign? A few of you, okay. So they're a global anti-trafficking organization. And in South Africa, they're also based down in Cape Town. I mean, I don't know why they don't just come up to Joburg, really. It's beautiful up here. But they're based down in Cape Town, doing great work down there. And they have volunteers that they call A-teams. And the A-team's responsibility is basically just awareness and fundraising, specifically for the A21 campaign. But Randburg does have an A-team. It's headed up by a lady called Mandy. She's with Rhema Church, and if you'd like to connect up with her, then let me know. I'll happily send you her contact details to get in touch and just see what they're doing and how you can maybe get involved. Then, separate from the A21, there are also outreach teams in Johannesburg. So if you really have a heart for the ladies who are in prostitution and you'd like to maybe try out that ministry, again, let me know. It's called Awakened, is the ministry here in Joburg, and they go out to the ladies in, I think, the Lovo area. There is training provided before you go. And then there's also a team related to that go into the strip clubs around Gauteng and reach out to the ladies there. So the aim of these outreach ministries is not to go and rescue people. It's gospel-based, so you're going out to share the love of Jesus with these ladies, and sometimes men as well, in the sex industry. But it's obviously an industry where there's a lot of vulnerable people, and where you could potentially come across traffic victims. Ride for a cause. Do we have any cyclists in the house? None. Well, you disappoint me. I was hoping to do a bit of recruitment, but we're basically looking to have a team ride in the 94.7 Cycle Challenge this year for us. And so if you would like to ride for us, or if you know of anyone who is a keen cyclist and maybe would like to ride for a charity this year, please do put them in touch with us. Or if you maybe don't want to ride, because I've already told my team I'm not riding, I'll be handing out, I'll be one of the foot soldiers on the day handing out the awareness material. So if you'd like to maybe just help out on the day or be part of the team that's doing the planning and the prep for that, you can get in touch with us as well. We'd love to have some more people on board. Right, fundraise also. An easy enough one, either for us as the NFN or for one of the network partners, one of the organizations in the network. But this is an area we can all use some help with, I'll be honest. And just an example of some high school girls last year, they came forward and they said, we just love what you guys are doing and we want to support you and raise a bit of money. And so they had a girls' night, a movie night. So they had their movies and their popcorn and they had little games going and quizzes and raffles. And between this group of young girls, they raised just over 2,000 Rand for us, which was amazing. So it really can be something fun and easy to do. Just specifically for us as the NFN, one of the projects that we're currently working very hard on, so again, because our legislation is not yet in operation, your average police officer has not been trained up in human trafficking. So if you had to go to your local police station and report this, the chances of you chatting to someone who actually knows what you're talking about are pretty slim. And so what we've done, we're working with SAPS, and we've basically offered to go into every police station in Gauteng and do an awareness session on human trafficking for the guys at station level. They're very keen on the project, mainly because they don't have to pay a cent for it. But it does come to around, I think, 2,000 Rand per station we've worked the budget out to be. And there are 142 stations in Gauteng. So support for that would be really greatly appreciated. If you as a church or as a community maybe wanted to raise the 2,000 and say, here you go, this is for Randburg Station. We want to make sure they get this awareness session. You can look at doing something like that as well. But then support for the network and for the partners in other ways, not necessarily maybe financial, but maybe looking at things like printing, helping out with printing, helping out with media space, creating advertising. I had a company come to me the other day. They do outdoor advertising, billboards and street pole ads, and they said, we just want to help you create awareness. And I said to them, wow, that's really great, but I don't have any billboard templates. And they said, don't worry, we'll help you make one. And that was just incredible, So they're taking who they are as a business and what they do, and just donating not money, but their space and their time and their skills to help us create awareness, which was incredible. Things like graphic design, I'm always looking for people because I'm so bad at it. Always looking for people who can help out with stuff like that. Maybe practical goods. So for example, one of our network partners, one of the strong network partners in Joburg is Hope for Women, and they're based in Four Ways. And their program is quite unique in that they work doing prevention and sort of reintegration. So it's a sewing business. They make the most beautiful handbags and that kind of stuff, but working with survivors of trafficking, as well as with women who are very vulnerable to being trafficked. And they're looking, ironing boards, irons, certain sewing machines, tables, that kind of stuff. So there's always practical goods that you can maybe help out with as well. Yeah, and if you hear of an event or a campaign that's going on, go along to support it. Encourage your friends and your family to go along to learn some more. Just by having people there is really encouraging for those of us who are doing these kinds of things. And then in terms of a ministry of encouragement, a lot of people in the field are voluntary. There's not a huge budget for this work at this stage in South Africa. And so just an example would be maybe, again, as a ladies group, next time you get together, look at doing something like making cards or scrapbooking or those kind of things that we all seem to like a lot. And, you could write the cards out to the Safe House staff, and we could make sure that they get it, just to say, hey, we don't know you, but thank you for what you're doing. Let me tell you, the staff that are working at these safe houses, they're working with these incredibly, incredibly broken people, and I do not envy them. It is tough, tough work, but they do it. they do it, and they do the best that they can with what they have. And so something like a card from a group of ladies to just say thank you, we recognize you and appreciate you, would do so much to boost, just to encourage them. Be a conscious consumer, all right? We touched on this earlier this morning, but supporting the companies and the brands that you know are slave labor free. And unfortunately, this is an area in South Africa that isn't really being championed at the moment. So, we don't really want to go out attacking brands and saying, oh, don't buy from these people because, we rather want to encourage by saying, actually, go and buy these brands because we know that they're good. So I've mentioned Hope for Women already. They make things like handbags and whatnot. And then Tabitha from Hope for Women told me that Fossil and Cotton On are quite astute in this area. So those are good brands to look out for. And then I know the Body Shop is very conscious about their goods. Slightly more pricey, yes, but there's a reason for that. And you're paying for peace of mind at the end of the day as well. But we would love to see a champion or several champions rising up in South Africa to really start focusing on this, the supply chains and the labor trafficking side of things. So if that's on your heart, if your seat's getting hot right now, come and talk to me. All right. And then the last one is pray. All right. The foundation of what we do is prayer. It has to be. This is not something we can go and fight in our own strength. And I've learned that the hard way. But again, prayer is just, it's so vital to what we're doing. A quick example, I don't know how many of you have really read through Chronicles. At my church, we've been working through the book of Chronicles, and it tells the stories of the kings of Judah. And it's amazing how you get a king, and all he did was seek God, and things went good. And then you get a king who did evil in the sight of the Lord, and things just went really bad. And there's that pattern, on and on, good and bad, and up and down. But I've really, with this work, it's the same thing. We have to seek God. We have to seek His will and His design for the work if we're going to have an impact on this thing of human trafficking. Couple of options if you'd like to join our NFN prayer team. So these are individuals around the country who have said, I want to get involved, and the way I can do that is by praying for what you guys are doing. So we send an email out every Monday morning to this team with specific prayer points from our NFN core team, but also from our network partners and the projects that they're doing and the meetings that they have. And it's just so wonderful to know that there's a group of people around the country who are consistently praying for us every week. Then we also have a quarterly Priceless Prayers meeting. So this is specifically for Gauteng, where we encourage people to get together and pray against human trafficking in Gauteng. It's a lovely morning. It's usually a Saturday morning. Next one is the 23rd of May, and it's at the King's School in Robin Hills. Oh, it's New Creation Family Church, but it's at the King's School in Robin Hills in Randburg. And it's usually from about 8:30 for 9 until 11. So it's 2 or 3 hours out of a Saturday morning once every 3 months. I really encourage you to come along and join us with that. We'd love to have you there. Or you could start your own prayer group. Amazing things have been birthed through prayer. I don't know if anyone has heard of Stop Trafficking of People. They're also a local NGO, and they started up in Stellenbosch and are now in various other parts of the country as well. But the whole reason that this group or this team started up was through a group of ladies getting together every week to pray, which is incredible. All right, and then these are just contact details, all of our website and Twitter and all that good stuff, as well as my number and my email if you'd like to get in touch. So at this stage, that's it from me, and I would like to open up for questions, if anyone has questions. She's coming with the mic.
Good afternoon, everybody. Diane, I'd like to ask you a question about the lifespan of human trafficked individuals and what happens to them afterwards when they die.
Okay. There is a statistic or a figure that says that most trafficking victims, and this again is based on research done within the sex trafficking side, that the average lifespan of a trafficking victim is 7 years. Obviously, from being in the sex trade and all the risks that come with that. 7 years is the average. For the other forms of trafficking, we don't know. But what happens to them? I mean, a lot of cases, they just end up being used and used and used and used until they're just worthless in the eyes of their traffickers, and so they get thrown out or they get sold on to the next person, or basically just thrown away. And then a lot of them, you'll find up, those are the ladies that end up on the streets. It's all that they know now. They're in complete survival mode, and to get out of that is almost impossible.
I just wanted to know if you actually do these kind of talks at schools as well.
I don't personally, but we do have a team in Gauteng that go into schools. It's OM, Operation Mobilization. They have a team called the Freedom Climb. Some of you might have heard of them. They climb mountains. It's women who climb mountains around the world to raise awareness and funds against trafficking. So we have an OM Freedom Climb team. They're based in Pretoria, but they're willing to come to Joburg schools as well. And they have a great program that they do for the kids. If you email me, I'll link you up with them, yeah.
I was just wondering, there's a new law about children having to have the proper paperwork. Is that a good idea in light of the human trafficking?
That's for the traveling, if they're going to travel out of the country. Yeah, I believe that law's been pushed to June, if I'm not mistaken. Look, I think it's incredibly proactive of Home Affairs to put something like that into place. But the reality is that a lot of children are trafficked domestically within South Africa too. So that might help curb international child trafficking, but it's not going to stop domestic child trafficking. And I think it's going to be a logistical nightmare, to be honest. But I don't think it's a bad initiative. Any other questions?
Diane, when we met, you said something that really triggered something off in my mind and my heart, was that every single culture group in South Africa of our rainbow nation is involved in this. One tends to think it might be one or the other culture. But then you mentioned that there were 2 Afrikaans girls who wrote books about their experiences. And that really, yes. I think we need to be made aware that this is right across the board in South Africa. Mm. So I think it's important that you just perhaps elaborate on that.
Okay, sure. Yes, you are 100% correct. This human trafficking is not something that's limited to one people group or one ethnicity or religion or nationality. It's everybody. And there are two girls that have written books. The one has just been recently published. It's called, they're both in Afrikaans only at this stage. Van skoolbank tot bordeelbed. Sorry, my Afrikaans is shocking. But as far as I understand it, from the school desk to the brothel bed. It's based on the true story of Ilani Kruger. She's a survivor of sex trafficking. And just quite a harrowing story. But that is, I believe, is available at some of the bigger bookstores already, so you can have a look out for that. The other one is called Vicky, and that is available through Jath van der Westhuizen, who is one of the co-authors. Vicky was trafficked here in Joburg as well. I think between Kempton Park and Boksburg, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was about 7 years ago, but I stand to be corrected on all the details. But the way she was one of the ones who, there was a police raid and they literally found her handcuffed to the bed or chained to the bed. She sort of struck up a friendship with the main officer who was part of that raid, and she found out that he enjoyed writing, and she said to him, "You've got to tell my story." Obviously the name has been changed and all the details have been changed to protect her identity, but the basic story is based on what happened to her. So those are definitely 2 books to look out for. There's also another one on the drug trafficking side, or the forced drug muling. It's called Dead Cows for Piranhas. So, in the Amazon River in South America, they have those piranhas that love to eat flesh. And so traditionally what they do if they want to have a safe crossing across the river, they throw a dead cow into the river so that the piranhas go to the cow and then they can pass safely through the water. And so that's the same concept taken over into the drug trafficking side, where they send these ladies in as the dead cows, knowing that they're the decoys, they're going to be caught, as with Nolu's case that I shared earlier. And so there's a lady called Hazel Friedman. She's an investigative journalist, and she just noticed that there was a really high number of South African ladies sitting in Thai prison for drug trafficking. So she went to find out why. And I haven't read the book yet. It was also released, I think, just in November last year. But apparently from what she discovered, that most of these women had been trafficked, that they weren't, they hadn't gotten into it by choice. So those are 3 local books that you can look out for if you want to read some real stories.
Hi, afternoon. How many kidnapping children, men, ladies, we think have just been kidnapped that go into the trafficking?
I can't give you statistics. In South Africa, it's one area that we're really lacking in. The main reason, again, being because we don't have the legislation. So we have statistics from each government department. So, for example, the National Prosecuting Authority have their stats, but those are only the cases that have gone to court. Social Development have their stats, but it's a literal head count of who's been through their accredited shelters. SAPS cannot load trafficking cases onto their system because it's not an official crime yet, because the legislation isn't in operation. So they get labeled under things like kidnapping, abduction, rape, that kind of thing. But I know there is quite a concern amongst the anti-trafficking field that a lot of those missing persons cases are linked to trafficking. One of our network partners used to work with PSARU, the People Search and Rescue Unit, and a lot of her cases, she said, started out as missing persons cases and ended up being trafficking situations. So I think there is definitely a link, but we can't say every kidnapping case is human trafficking. It's got to be investigated and the elements need to be there. But yeah, hopefully, again, with the legislation coming in, we can start keeping proper track of these kinds of things, so we'll have a better idea of how strong that link actually is. I actually watched a movie just last night. It premiered in South Africa. It's called 8 Days. The director is South African, but he lives in the States now, and his sister was actually trafficked years ago when they still lived in Johannesburg. And but in that case, it was a missing persons. The story is around this young girl, and it was a missing persons case that ended up being trafficking.
I've just got a question around counselling. So what kind of counselling is made available to people that are rescued from trafficking? Yeah.
So the counselling side of things is the safe house's responsibility. So every safe house has to have a social worker and has to have, if not an in-house counsellor, at least someone that they're outsourced to. So counselling is part of the mandate of the safe house.
You know the local newspapers, or not local, but...
Sorry, I can't hear you.
These newspapers often advertise these ladies advertising themselves for work. Could that be any way, perhaps in a subtle way, linked to that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't touch on the classified ads just because of time. I usually do. But very often if you look, you just need to know what language to look out for. And you can see that the guys are advertising what they have to their clients. Unfortunately, it's not something that's really very well monitored. And again, this is an area where you as a community can get involved. I've noticed, I used to live Randburg side, and the Randburg Sun is full of these ads, these classified ads for adult entertainment. And I now live Edenvale side, and I've noticed that newspaper has minimal. There's not a lot of it at all. But I think, if we as a community stand up and get involved and say to the newspapers, we don't want this stuff in our paper. That's where you can make the difference as a community. Get enough voices together, the newspaper has to stand up and listen. But yes, absolutely, it can definitely be, and not just the newspaper and the classified ads, but online. There are specific websites online where you can go and shop for what you want. Sorry, do you want to just wait for the mic and then everyone can hear you? Sorry.
Hi, I'd like to know, once we've collected the bras and the clothing and toiletries, who can we hand it to? Do we phone the Epic Foundation or...?
You're welcome to get hold of, her name's Alta, who works at the Epic Foundation. She's based in Steeldale, which is down south, but she also works at PwC in the mornings in Sunninghill. So there's those drop-off points. For the bras, that's Free the Girls, so that's separate. And you can get in touch with them. They are on Facebook. They have a Facebook page. Or if you get in touch with me, I can link you up with her. I think they do have a drop-off point in Bryanston, if I'm not mistaken, for the bras.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else? Are we all happy? Oh, there's one more.
Me again.
Yeah.
What numbers, if you think somebody's in danger, who would be the best person to speak to?
Yes, sorry. I thought that was Anya. It is earlier. The 0800 555 999. Well done. Let me get back to it.
Gone too far, I think.
There we go. 0800 555 999. Okay, that's our national toll-free helpline number.
You're not going to plug it in?
Okay.
Wow. Sure, Diane, I've been sitting spellbound. We've already met with Diane once, and all these stories she tells just really touched my heart, and I'm so thrilled. We've got little Katie standing at the back, and she was the one who said to us, we need to do something about this. We need to create awareness of what's going on right here on our doorstep, and that's how Diane was introduced to us. And Diane, I just want to thank you very much, and I'm not just saying this, I really mean it. To see a young woman like you with such a passion for something to do, something worthwhile to do with your life is really encouraging. And to see how the Lord had led you into this ministry is really great, because you're right at the center of where He wants you. And so I think you're going to hear quite a bit from us in future. If we have anything that we want to get involved in, we can always go through Diane. I'm sure she wouldn't mind, and then just tell us where to go from there. But this will be wonderful for us to start initiatives and to create awareness. If that's all we can do, just to create awareness is really the starting point, which is wonderful. And so thank you for your time. I know you don't normally take these meetings. She did it as a special for us, and we're grateful for that. We've got the person right at the top to come and speak, and she's very knowledgeable, and we've learned lots today which we can get involved in and we can do. And so we've got just a little gift of appreciation for you, just to remember this afternoon.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. And then Tracy, who was sitting at the back with the books. Where are you, Tracy? Do you mind coming to the front? I just want to give you a little gift too. Thank you for your time. We salute you for doing this. We know that it's mostly volunteer work, and that's why we're so keen for folk. Thank you so much. Thanks, Tracy. Okay. So we're very keen for you to buy these freedom dolls. It's more than just having a little freedom doll. It's what it represents. And so by buying one of these or one of these coffee table books, it's a wonderful way to start a conversation. If you want to make people aware, is to have this coffee book. Obviously, in certain households with young children, it's not ideal. But it's a wonderful way to create it. So the books and the freedom dolls will still be at the back. You're welcome just to buy one on your way out. And so I just am thrilled that there's so many different ways we can get involved in. But, when we decided on this topic, sorry, do you mind my back? Sorry.
No, it's fine.
We wanted to give it a worthwhile name and a theme, because we realized it was going to be quite a hectic subject to discuss. And we thought that what is our worth was really great. And where do we start to find out what is our worth? And one starts right at the beginning of the Bible. And so if you don't mind, I'm just going to share a couple of verses with you. I'm not going to be long, but just so that we can see in God's eyes, and I know that's how Diane started as well, how valuable we really are. And so we go to Genesis, the very first book in Genesis, verses 26 and 27 says, we are made in his image, the very image of God. Psalm 139, one of my favorite psalms, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And then all our days of our lives are numbered before one of them even came to pass. And that is just wonderful because it confirms that God had prior knowledge of each one of us. And when I say each one of us, I'm speaking about those folk who have been entrapped in this trafficking situation, who feel desperate that they can't get out. That God has prior knowledge and he has a plan for every life. We need to know and trust him for that. And then she also shared John 3:16, for God so loved the world. And that encompasses even those who are doing the trafficking. And we don't exclude those people. When we pray for those folk who've been entrapped, we pray for the ones who entrap them because God loves them too. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could see some miracles happen of people who get out of that and who are knowledgeable and could actually turn the others around as well. Now, when you look at those three verses, you'll notice that the verbs are mainly things that God are doing for us. It's not really us. It says are made, are fearfully and wonderfully made, were written, God loved, God gave. So these phrases have one thing in common, and that is that these things are made for us or done for us by God. These are not really things that we deserve or earn. It's a free gift that God gives mankind. So we can conclude that our worth is not really of the self at all. It's rather the worth given to us by God. And so we are of inestimable value to him because of the high price that he paid to buy us back. And that high price was the life of his own son. That's how valuable God feels we are. And then the Bible says that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. And I think the miracle of that is that he loved us in spite of our sinful condition. And because he did, we now have infinite worth. 1 John 1 verse 9 says, if we confess our sin, there's nobody outside the scope of Jesus' love and the blood that cleanses people who ask for forgiveness. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And in John 1 it says, those who receive Christ and believe his name, to them God gave the right to become his children. So if we focus on how much God loves us and the price that he paid to buy us back to himself, we'll come to see ourselves and every other human being that we come into contact with, and that will help us to understand just what the human life is really worth in God's sight. So our self-worth, we often base of what other people think of us, don't we? How we look, how big we are, how small we are, etc., or our social standing. That's what we look and that's what we judge. But the one and only and true authority of our self-worth is our Lord Jesus Christ. And since he gave up his own life, dying on the cross on our behalf, it should tell us just how valuable we really are. And I think we all need to remember that as we deal with people, just in general as well, that life has meaning for God. It might look like these folk here, the young children, the women who've been trafficked into drug muling, etc., that their lives are worth very little. In God's sight, they are precious. And that's why we need to get involved. And I challenge you to do that in your sphere of giftedness or what you feel you can. And wow, Diane gave us so many wonderful ideas of how we can become involved. So girls, I just want to have a little thank you at the end, and that's just for the team who put this all together. I know they would not like me to do it. We're the ones in the red and black. We had to really go and search for red and black. But if you look at our theme is red and black. And when I asked the lady, dear Juliana, who did the flowers, I said to her, we want you to bring in a little bit of white because that is hope. We are never without hope. And so in the darkness of what's happening, we have the hope of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's what we need to share with a really needy world out there. And so thank you, girls. And would you mind just standing? If they haven't seen you yet, you the red and black ladies, won't you just stand for a minute? I'd love them just to see who you are. And under the very capable leadership of Karen Queno, Karen's taken over from running these events, we just say thank you, girls. They have worked hard. It doesn't just happen. And I know they don't want any glory for themselves. We wanted this to be an afternoon where God takes the glory. So thank you so much for that. We have sound, and you can hear because of a very special gentleman. You can only see his eyes sticking out at the back there, and he was the only thorn amongst the roses today. And Brad, we say thank you so much. It was just so wonderful to know that he would just take over and he would mic us up and do what needs to be done, and we're very grateful to you. And for all the ladies, thank you. Those who supplied the lovely eats, if you still feel you want to nibble on something on your way out, I think there's still a couple of plates over there. Spend time with your friends. You've got the afternoon free. The husbands are looking after the children. You're not going to get an opportunity like this again. So make use of this and just go and have another slice of something to eat and chat. And if you want to chat to Diane, she's there, and make sure that you buy either a book or one of those little freedom dolls. And so thank you to the men, too, who carried all the heavy things for us. They did it so selflessly, and nothing that this team did was ever too much. You know, praise the Lord for WhatsApp. I can't tell you how many hundreds of thousands of WhatsApps were flying between us organizing this. And we just praise the Lord for modern technology. And so we hope that you had an informative, albeit a strangely enjoyable afternoon, and that you leave here finding that as you go into your different communities, and I know there are folk from different churches here, that you can educate those people in your community about this as well. I hope that you took in a lot of this. And so let us just close in prayer before we go. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you that we have no doubt that you esteem those of us and all of us who've been made in your image very highly. How else would you sacrifice your precious Son to die on the cross so that we can have life and we can have it abundantly? And so we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you for all the new things that we've learned. And Lord, not necessarily things that are pleasant at all, but things are happening around us. And it's important for us not to put our heads down and pretend that it's not happening. We need to be aware of this. We need to get involved in whatever way our circumstances allow at this stage. And so we thank you for Diane and her helpers. We thank you for this network of people who feel led to get involved and to try and help folk who have been entrapped. Lord, we pray that you will grant them strength, all the strength that they need, that you will encourage them, that they will know, as Diane said, that they cannot do it without prayer. And so what a privilege to bring them to the throne of grace. And that's what we're doing now. And we pray for every woman who was here. And perhaps, Lord, some here are not entrapped by outsiders. Some feel entrapped by their own circumstances. Lord, we pray that they might know that they are valuable in your sight. And I just pray that if it is that is anybody here who's never experienced that joy of being set free by Jesus Christ himself, that they will not let this day pass without talking to somebody about it. And so, Lord, we commit each person to you as they drive home now. We just pray for safety for them, and we thank you once again for a wonderful afternoon spent together, a really worthwhile time. We pray all these things in that matchless, beautiful name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.